Hi everyone, this is Cody Morse, and this is my presentation over the case study involving Truman Elementary School. So category 1, what do I know? Reading scores are obviously struggling. Based off of what the specialist says, practices are not in line with current research. Parents are concerned enough to bring it to the administrational level. Students continue to fall behind as they progress through their primary grades in school. So this is obviously a problem. And then the demographics suggest a fairly decent socioeconomic status, which may make qualifying for the grants harder, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So what do I need to know? One of the big deals is, why is Truman's results so much different than that in other districts? Why is this school being highlighted? What's our staff makeup, look like? Years experience, years in the building, years in their subject area, things like that. Former building administration philosophy on how things should be done. Is that still affecting what our staff is doing today? And what former interventions were attempted, if there were any interventions attempted. This also plays back to that former point that I made there with the philosophy of the former administration. The current administration's only been in the building 2 years, so there's still some old habits, I guess you would say, that probably need to be addressed. So I need to know, what are those habits? What's the problem here is Truman's reading scores have declined and continue to follow a trend in decline. That needs to be addressed. Teachers obviously aren't utilizing research data to guide their instructional practices. Parents are upset with results that we're seeing, obviously. And this grant could be hard to receive when you view the test scores and economic status versus requirements of the grant. Once again, we'll speak about that a little bit more later. So my proposed plan of action: data needs to be assessed, evaluated, and disaggregated by administration and teacher. Data needs to direct our area of focus for groupings, professional developments, research-based findings for grant proposals, things like that. Data is everything in this case. We need to make vital changes based off of the collected data after it's disaggregated. We can spin it 1,000 ways to show us exactly what we need to see. So it can be used in more than one area than just a grant application. We can use it school-wide. I need to address the PTO with a presentation over our current findings, what our proposed plan of action is to address our issues, receive some feedback from them, take some suggestions from them if they have any. Continuing on here, we need to go ahead and apply for the grant. I would also like to go outside the district and visit schools who are performing well on assessments. If there are schools within our district who are also performing well, I'd like to go visit them. Let's see what they're doing different than us. Let's take some suggestions from them. I'm all about beg, borrow, and steal. I don't need to reinvent the wheel here. So let's see what works for others, and let's implement it and put our twist on it. We also need to research potential resources that come from outside the schools, from outside the education system. I have organizations, professional groups, industries with curriculums. Being a former ag teacher, my line of thinking goes to Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau offers a reading type curriculum for elementary schools that addresses agriculture in the classroom. Being a high school teacher, I don't know much about how elementaries operate, but I would assume that this is a very good resource for them to help with practice reading, as well as exposing that agriculture in the classroom that most students may not know about. So as far as implementing this plan of action, we obviously need to educate and train all our administration and our teaching staff on not only how to disaggregate that data, but how to use it to their advantage for instructional practice. We need to base our student groups and professional developments off of results from the collected data. Pinpoint, use it to our advantage in a particular area, with an overall big picture mindset when we do it. We need to consider changes, in teachers' grade levels that they're teaching and the students within those. Maybe a second grade teacher needs to go to fourth grade or vice versa. We can use that data to help us, figure those solutions out. We also need to use the data to support our grant application. So as far as promoting success of all students, by using this data, we are basically making our teachers more aware of the results that they are getting out of their classroom, what needs to change, and we can get it to the point where it's pinpoint, where it's, hey, you need to make one vital change here and one minimal change here, but other than that, keep doing what you're doing. That data will tell us what we need to know. Maybe we find a major flaw that needs to be addressed immediately. That data is going to show it to us. But like I said, in the bullet there, it allows teachers to focus on specifics rather than generalities in their instruction. Student grouping can be better suited for the instructional practice. It can also be used to help fit in for particular learning styles. That is something that data is going to show for us. And our professional development can be focused on the areas that we actually need to work in. It doesn't have to be, professional development over something that nobody's going to implement, nobody's going to utilize in their classroom. We can do it right now over reading. That's what needs to be addressed. Let's build our professional development on reading from the data that we've collected to better ourselves. We can also, data-driven instruction goes right along with it. It should be apparent that student success. That should show up almost immediately after we've implemented it. Let's use it to our advantage. And then by conducting the research and providing the results, if this grant is received, we'll have the opportunity to put the funds back into those classrooms to further the success that students will see in this in the reading area that we're addressing right now. Whether that's curriculum or specific programs on technology, things like that. Maybe it sends, like I said, teachers to a specified training for reading comprehension, whatever it may be. We're going to use those funds to promote the success of the students that we need. So category 4, debriefing the problem. As far as thinking, what was I thinking? I think that we need to collect data and disaggregate it to use it to our advantage. Simple as that. We need professional development, obviously, and we're going to use that data to help drive that professional development. We need to look at strategic placement of teachers and students. Let's help them get better by putting them somewhere where they can be better. And then obviously, I had a thought that the research needs to be pertinent and it needs to be timely for this grant proposal. As far as what was I feeling, I felt very deeply about the importance of the data collection, analyzation, and disaggregation for strategic implementation of practices. This is that continued school improvement that's also talked about in the next bullet. That's how you get that school improvement that you seek to find. I have a very deep feeling because of this class and in my personal life outside of this presentation that data can tell me a whole lot. I'm not the best at it. I want to get better at it, but that's how we're going to get better, is by using more and more of it and putting it into practice. And then I also feel hope for the teaching staff and the administrators for improvement with this strategic planning based off of the data collection. Value, obviously I value the importance of data and using data to improve practices. I value the research that is conducted to provide data because it's pertinent research that gives us factual data that can be used. This is not we're going to do research and come up with a theory. This is research with factual data that can be implemented right now, because in my opinion, theory does no good without practical application, and that research, there's a fine line between those two within research and understanding how to use that research outside of a theory to provide a practical application should provide data, in my opinion, and this is a huge point here. And then the grants that continue to help schools operate and seek improvement through research, those are a great thing. We obviously need them. So some unresolved issues we still have is, in my opinion, whether or not the grant money is obtainable. You read that grant description, it talks about having high poverty in this socioeconomic status. We don't really have that, in my opinion. My former school district I worked for had 72% students on free and reduced lunch. This school has 15. So it may or may not be attainable, but I'm definitely going to apply for it. If the problem stemmed from a former administrational philosophy, or if it's a teacher-induced issue, or a combination of the two, we need to correct that now. But I need to know where it started from so we can more or less nip it at the bud. Which groupings work best, or if this is even worth attempting, honestly. And finally, an unresolved issue is, do we need more interventions than just our reading area? Is there a bigger problem brewing somewhere else that needs to be addressed in order to see success in other places? So as far as reflection, continuous improvement, to do that, I'm obviously going to address the PTO concerns. I'm going to tell them, hey, this is where we're at, this is what we've done, this is what we're looking at doing. Help ease their mind a little bit, because we need them for this improvement practice. Obviously, we're filing a grant application. That's another improvement. We need to support that teaching staff through professional development. I have every intention of doing just that. And then obviously disaggregating our data that we collect. So the use of data, and using it to respond and communicate to a larger community about concerns. We use the data to drive instructional practices and changes. That's the biggest point. Disaggregate that data mass and let them know, this is why we're using this data and this is what we're using it for. And then the organization of our teachers and students based off of that data. You use that data to make yourself better all the way around. Any way that you can and possibly will do, this is how you do it. This is why we have it. So policies and laws, we got to meet the legal requirements of the grant application, obviously. We also need to understand the use of the funds to receive improved curriculum purchases, which, kind of goes hand in hand with the grant application. And lastly, this is a point that kind of hit me last minute, but something that needs to be thought about is the protection of individual identities because of that data. We have to be able to protect our students and protect what is gathered from that. So that's a big point here that needs to stay addressed. We gotta stay within our laws. So as far as dialogue, with outside the school decision makers, obviously once again addressing PTO concerns, working with those outside resources I mentioned earlier, and then the school visits to observe performing schools. That's another deal outside the school. We use all that. We go to our decision makers who, if they're completely outside the school district, they're those stakeholders. Those stakeholders have a say, especially if you have site councils, things like that. They also may be big donors to the school. They may want to help us address the issues that we're having through the funding side of it. They're going to need dialogue, and they're going to have some trust. So this is how we do it. So anyways, that's my presentation. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.